And we're continuing with the 10th chapter of The Embroidered Sunset by Joan Aiken. Dear Lucy, Julius Winterstein, who visited me last Wednesday, was immensely impressed by our aunt's picture and says that if there are more, and she is agreeable to the idea, he would be glad to handle them for her at his Mayfair gallery. I may say that Julius is not at all in the habit of making such a suggestion after seeing a single sample of an artist's work, so this is an offer to be taken seriously, as I am sure you will appreciate. Can you let him know as soon as possible how your aunt feels on the matter? I will get my secretary to put the gallery's address at the bottom, and if she approves, send him all the pictures you can lay hands on. Julius did not commit himself to the question of prices at this stage, but quite honestly, if you or she can produce 10 or 20 canvases like the one you sent me, I think that your mind may be relieved of financial anxiety about her from now on. You are right, I love the picture. I look at it all day, and your letters give me inexpressible pleasure, but you should lose no more time in these northern parts. There has been too much delay already. Make haste back to my piano. Max B. With a start, Lucy glanced at her watch and realized that she had been sitting in the car reading and thinking about this short letter for 20 minutes. Guiltily, she tucked it back into its envelope and was about to move when she saw somebody leave the little grotto summer house among the conifers and make for the hall, not crossing the open tract of rough park grass, but skittering furtively round by the belt of evergreen shrubs. Dusk was thickening. A great owl coasted by on moon-colored wings. Lucy could not distinguish the man very clearly. He was short and carried something under his arm. Golf club? Fishing rod? Perhaps it was Harold Marsham come back? No, too short for Harold. Too fast-moving for Clarkson, the gardener who had a pronounced limp. In a moment he reached the door that led, by a back stair, to Mrs. Marsham's flat, opened it and disappeared. Maybe she has a boyfriend, Lucy thought. Though it would be a bold fellow who'd take her on. Honestly, though, this place is beginning to spook me. I hope Fiona and Aunt Fennel agree to my plan. I'm sure that would be the best arrangement. She hurried back to the kitchen where Mrs. Marsham was helping Fiona serve up steamed fish with mashed potatoes and carrot. My uncle's staying in York, she said abruptly before Mrs. Marsham could ask why she was late. Will it be all right if I phone him after supper and go over to see him tomorrow afternoon? I bet you know that already, you hag. I bet you read his letter. Of course, you may have time off if you wish, Mrs. Marsham said smoothly. But why don't you invite your uncle to come here? I'd expect he would like to inspect the place where Miss Culpepper is staying. Well, I will, thanks, but he's over on business and may not have time. Aunt Fennel ate very little supper, Lucy noticed. The old lady's attention kept wandering. She would pause with a spoon halfway to her mouth and fall into a worried abstraction. Don't let your rice pudding get cold, Aunt Fen, dear. I keep thinking about Taffy Puss, Aunt Fennel said apologetically. I keep wondering, after all. He's up there at Highbeck, half-starved, with no one to look after him. I do wish you'd slip along after supper, dearie. It wouldn't take a minute in your little car, and see if you can see him. If it is Taffy, he'll have a big black mark in the middle of his forehead. He'll have a big black A mark in the middle of his forehead. This seemed such an unreasonable request that Lucy was quite dismayed. Had the news of Wilby's advent so upset Aunt Fennel that she was becoming slightly senile? It'll be dark now, Aunt Fennel, she said gently. Supposing I take a look tomorrow? Very well, dearie, the old lady sighed. I'll be off to bed then. If you really can't go this evening, she gave Lucy a slightly reproachful look and made her way slowly upstairs. He's in York, if it is him. Mrs. Masham put down the tray. Gates peered under the meat dish covers. Steamed fish, for the Lord's sake! Can't you give us anything better than that? If he's going to come here... Or is he going to come here? I don't know. The girl's going to call him. She wants to go and see him. I said ask him here. Good. When's she going to phone? Any time now. Harbin took off the extension receiver and laid it down. They sat listening. Presently they heard a crackle and a voice. Royal Turpin Hotel. Can I speak to Mr. Wilberforce Culpepper? Uncle Willoughby, Lucy speaking. I got your letter. Hello, Princess. How's our little highness? Mrs. Marsham drew a snapping breath. I'm okay, thanks. I gave Aunt Fennel your message. Uncle Willoughby, she's not keen to go to York, so I guess if you want to see her, you'll have to come here. That's not at all convenient, Princess. As usual, he sounded injured and put upon. In fact, I don't think it can be managed. Russ and I are up to all the ears in conferences. This is ridiculous. It's essential we should all meet and have a chat. Sorry, said Lucy. I'm prepared to come over and see you tomorrow if you want, but Aunt Fennel won't be budged. Says she's happy where she is and no wish to move. How can I even know she's who she says she is? He demanded angrily. Can you bring a photo of her? Oh, really, Uncle Willoughby, what would that prove? When did you last see her? Anyway, I've no camera. I'll come over and see you tomorrow afternoon about 5, okay? See you then. Hey, wait, Lucy, what about the pictures? Tell you when I see you. What's this about pictures? Harbin demanded when Lucy had rung off. Oh, some nonsense. When the old lady was living at home, she used to do paintings all mixed with embroidery and patchwork and give them away to people. There are lots of them in Apley. And it now seems the Culpepers think they might be saleable and want to get hold of them all. That sounds like Fred, doesn't it? He always likes to grab anything that might turn out valuable. Harbin nodded slowly in agreement. Do you think that was Fred? Well, American accent, of course, but then he would, after 20 years there. It could have been Fred. It was like his way of talking. Harbin nodded again. Pity he won't come to this place. I wonder why. Could he know you were here, Linda? He wouldn't know I'd changed my name. He wouldn't know I'd changed my name. I'll ring Crossley. Get him to get a snap of this guy. Gates sniggered. He wants a snap of his old auntie. You want one of him. It's like those royal marriages, everyone acting coy. Harold could go and look at him, Mrs. Marsham said. He'll be in York tomorrow. Harold won't what? Won't know him. He could get a picture. No need to worry, Harold. I'll get Crossley on tailing him. And maybe we ought to get hold of some of these pictures. Why? Said Mrs. Marsham. What use are they? Bait, maybe? Gates laughed again. It's really just that he doesn't want Fred to get them. Who has them? Oh, most people in the village. And Adnan, the doctor, and Kirby. But it's a trouble getting people to part, it seems. I don't mind going to some trouble for Fred. Nor does Linda. Do you, Linda, love? What do you do? Give him a cold bath like the old girl who wandered up here? Fred's my pigeon, Harbin said. You just leave him to me. Mrs. Marsham shrugged and went out. That's another angle. Harbin looked after her thoughtfully. I don't want her interfering. Linda's getting a bit dictatorial in her old age. Maybe she'd better have a day off. 2 birds with 1 stone. He reached for the telephone again. Lucy started for York in a drenching and purposeful rain. Summer had turned to autumn. Leaves hurried from the wind-battered trees in great flocks. The whole upland countryside looked abused and bedraggled. On her way, she had the luck to catch a 5-minute fill-in before the afternoon concert. Max Benevic playing Scarlatti sonatas. Darling Max, if it weren't for the thought of you in between times, I swear I'd go frantic. Willoughby's being just as cussed as ever, and Aunt Fennel's decidedly queer today. I'm worried about her. Can it be that she really isn't Aunt Fennel and Willoughby's arrival has put her in dread of discovery? It was quite agreeable to go in out of the wet into the opulent turkey carpet and potted palm atmosphere of the Royal Turpin Hotel until she saw her uncle, just the same as ever. Hello, Uncle Willoughby. Hi, Russ. So now, Princess dear, just tell us the whole story, will you? Not much to tell, really, said Lucy. She looked across the tea table at smiling, pink-faced little Willoughby, hating him just as much as always. Seeing him again made her realize how life had changed for her since leaving his home. Her love for funny old Aunt Fennel, her love, yes, all right, wise guy Adnan for Max Benevec had introduced her to a new region of experience, and she was most profoundly reluctant to make a present of any part of this to Uncle Wilby, grinning at her with plump malice, munching on buttery crumpets, reducing everything to plot and counterplot, cheat, scheme, or be cheated. So where are all the old girls' pictures? Scattered all over the village. Nobody will part. They are thought to be lucky. Adnon, the doctor who looks after the old people at the home, he's got 9 or a dozen, but he won't part either. Well, he did offer me one. Big of him? Where's he live? In Kirby. I'll get after him. I'll get after him, said Russ. Lucy started to speak and checked herself. Adnan was a tough proposition. She was not concerned about him. He could take care of himself, but she decided not to mention Colonel Linton. He was a nice old boy. Besides, he was Lucy's preserve. And what about the old girl's identity? You still honestly not sure? How do you know she's not Miss Howe? I think she's just as likely to be Aunt Fennel pretending to be Miss Howe pretending to be Aunt Fennel. Why'd she do that, for Pete's sake? I don't know, said Lucy. Sometimes I get the idea she's not sure of herself. She's not sure now herself which of them she is. She thinks somebody killed her friend and now wants to kill her. Sounds crazy to me, said Wilby. Any chance of getting her into a mental home? Oh, good heavens, no. She's not in the least crazy, said Lucy, keeping calm with an effort. Well, Princess, you've made a pretty fair balls up of everything, haven't you? Wilby said genially. Lucy exploded with temper. I like that. I found her, didn't I? I got her out of that ghastly old drunk's house and fixed her up in a decent place where she's happy. And what about the pictures? And what about the cash? I suppose you spent that on this amazing jalopy I see parked outside. The cash is here, said Lucy angrily. She slapped down a pile of American Express checks. All except $10, which I'll pay you when I get my wages from Mrs. Marsham. Willoughby whistled. So, where did the car come from, then? She found it in a wood, suggested Russ, who had kept silent during this exchange. Lucy, studying him from time to time. Yes, he really was amazing. Yes, he really was amazingly like Harold Marsham, except for the difference in coloring. Found his ironic eye always on her, which annoyed her still further. Max Benevek gave it to me, if you want to know. Really? That's the guy who's going to teach you piano? The character who's dying? That's mighty decent of him. Wasn't it, Russ? He doesn't sound like all that dying to me, said Russ. He must have liked your playing an awful lot. Wonder what he expects in return for the car, said Wilby. I mean, we all know our little princess is quite genius on the keyboard, but this seems quite unusual. Or does he deal out sweet pea-coloured automobiles to all his lady pupils? For goodness sake, he does loathe me, thought Lucy, meeting Willoughby's twinkling little eyes over the greasy crumpet plate. Hating him so much herself, she should not have been surprised at the power of the hate he felt in return, but it still came as quite a shock. The fact that she had won Benefec's approval seemed to have intensified Willoughby's feelings against her to the point where they were almost beyond his control. I'm not staying here to be sneered at, she said furiously, pushing back her chair. I've told you all I know, and you know where to find Aunt Fennel if you want her. I'm off. She slung her duffel coat over her shoulder and marched out into the downpour. Hey, Lucy, come on back, said called Wilby in annoyance, grabbing up his watch from behind his plate and staring after her. Oh, what's the good, said Russ calmly. She won't come back. You shouldn't have needled her about the Benevik guy. It certainly does bug you that she's the only member of the family with the creative streak, doesn't it? Too bad Coral's such a dead loss. You keep your opinions to yourself, said Wilby angrily. If you want to be useful, look up this doctor's address. What's his name? Adnan. And hire us a car, something with a 4-wheel drive, and good tires and plenty of room in the back. What's all that commotion outside? Car crash. Russ presently returned to the report. It would be too much to hope that our little Lucy was involved. Afraid so. Truck overturned on some guy just as he was getting out of his car. It was loaded with newsprint, and he's still buried underneath. Oh, said Wilby, losing interest. Is that an evening paper? What's on at the movies? And we'll pause there.